What's up, yo? Welcome to Your One Life. I'm your host, Kim Young Kim, and I'm super glad to have you as a listener today. If you're new here, here's what this podcast is all about. This podcast is about teaching you from the greatest minds in the world, assisting you in all aspects of your life, and helping you to realize that you can get an early start on your December to-do list by reminding you that you can put up your Christmas lights now. Why wait for early December, which you can do in early November? Life hacks, baby. Let's go. All right, so I'm super excited about today's podcast, which is my interview with the co-director and co-producer of the documentary Join or Die, Mr. Pete Davis. It's a great conversation. He's a brilliant person, and his documentary is so important for our lives and for the future of the world at large. So here's my conversation with Pete Davis. Pete, how is it going, my man?
So great to be here. Great to be talking with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm super glad to have you here and excited to talk about your documentary and y'all's documentary, team effort, right? Yep. And other things as well. So we were originally expecting both you and your sister, Rebecca. I wrote an intro that's different from my usual intro, but I think it'll work regardless. So here we go. All
Wonderful.
Right. It's a tale as old as history. United we have victory. This brother and his sister sees, and research done in Italy confirmed the idea inspired by 6 nations, indigenous to this land, a one confederation that banded together for mutual aid and protection, and inspired a snake made up of different sections, which speaks to our souls through the voice inside, that there's one way to ride, we can join or die. It's a case for commitment in an age that's against it, because true joy is found in the beauty of community, where we meet together in a common place of unity through stepping outside yourself and leaving your home, and a simple action you can take like not bowling alone, a revolutionary thought found by a great mind. Dr. Robert Putnam, he saw how we're designed, because we need other people to survive and thrive, and fight off feelings of loneliness inside. Isolation's not the way you should use your time. Let's search for a connection of the humankind. And if you're up on daily news, you don't need this explained. But still we're not joining and not seeing the change that we've seen in social movements that we've had in the past. Because information can't change us. We meet in the class, room of the company we keep, the places we go deep. So turn off your Netflix right after this documentary and link up with people and transmit some good energy. Because as we save ourselves, we also save democracy. Interacting in these groups, we practice making policy, which helps us realize that the power's in our hands, not inside those ivory towers that are made by man. It's time we join a group and stand in solidarity for ourselves, each other, and also our posterity. With eyes on the prize, we can cross that bridge, but only together, so let's join and live.
Yes, amen. Amen. I think you captured it all. That was basically it.
Thank you.
That is the spirit of the film right there. Full-throated.
Awesome. Well, the film is on Netflix currently, and yeah, I'm super excited to share or have you share more about it. Real quick, since your sister isn't here, I just want to hear what it's like to work with your sister. And yeah, I mean, she seems like...
This is our favorite question we get. It's probably the thing that people are most intrigued by after the topic of the film, which is, can siblings do a project together? And the answer is we were able to make it through. You know, there's a lot of boundary crossing between deciding on edits or giving feedback to our animator and deciding who's going to drive mom to the next thing and what the plans are for Thanksgiving. But we were able to navigate it all. And you know, we thought it was weird that we did a sibling project together, but actually in film specifically, there's actually a real tradition of siblings doing movies together. You have the Coen brothers, you have the Wachowski sisters, you have the Duplass brothers, the Safdie brothers. So it actually is a tradition in the film world.
Wonderful. And I mean, y'all made a masterpiece. I really, really enjoyed it. I just watched it 2 days ago after watching it last year. And yeah, Rotten Tomatoes says a fantastic job. I say fantastic job. And
95% if not for the New York Times.
Really? New York?
Which is the reason we have that lost 5%.
Boo New York Times. Boo New York Times. Well, anyways, it's 100% in my heart.
No, all love to the NYT. All love to the gray lady. Okay. Yeah. Just joking. We're just happy we were reviewed. You know, all reviews are good reviews.
Yeah, facts. Cool. So this thing took you, 6-7 years, right? Is that correct?
Yep. We started around 2016. We're coming up on 10 years out from the idea.
That's amazing. I've not spent that amount of time on anything, maybe besides my power pose. But what is it like to finally see it all complete? And I guess I'm curious about, was there a surreal moment where, whether it was at the first film festival, South by Southwest, the Netflix deal, I'm sure there was many of those, but was there one moment where you're just like, whoa?
Yeah, every first-time filmmaker will tell you this. The experience of seeing it in a big theater is incredibly weird. It's the same theater where, Titanic plays, right. Star Wars plays or something, and then there's your little movie. That was very interesting. My favorite part of the whole filmmaking process, or the most intriguing part of the whole filmmaking process, is the sound effects folks. Film people would know this, but this was my first film I ever made. And I learned about the whole world of these sound beds that are laid out where every time, someone picks up an object in a film, they have to create that sound. And we have many animations in our film, and each of those animations, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of sounds. And sitting in our wonderful sound designer Cole Anderson's studio was also very surreal.
No, that's fantastic. I will say that the animation, the B-roll, the sound effects, it all just works super well together. After watching it just the other night, I was just like, oh, this flows so well.
Yeah, it's fun. What's so great, you mentioned the B-roll. One of the great things about our topic being so broad, our topic is community in America. It's a film about why you should join a club and why the fate of America depends on it. And if you're doing a documentary about a very specific moment in 1978 or something, you only have a certain amount of B-roll from that moment. But when you're making a moment about any time people have gotten together in groups in America, you basically just have this ocean of stuff, and it's all this curatorial project of figuring out, I need a meeting as B-roll, but let's find the exact perfect meeting from the 10,000 photos of meetings that we have in the Library of Congress archives or something. So that was very fun.
Yeah, that's amazing. Very cool. So you are a former student of Dr. Robert Putnam, and you took that class, and it seemed to have a pretty big impact on your life. Was there a really strong correlation between the class itself and the documentary that you presented?
Yeah, in many ways, we wanted to open up the class to the general public through this film. We actually filmed Putnam's final edition of that class when he was in the year he was retiring from teaching. Mm-hmm. And it was the class that changed my life. The most important thing about it was a class that turned on a light in me of the importance of community. It gave me a lens of seeing community everywhere and seeing it in so many public problems and public solutions. And we wanted people to have that same light bulb moment. Everyone who's taken his class has had that. People who have run into reading the book Bowling Alone have had that. And we wanted the movie to be another opportunity to give people that light bulb moment of, wait, community is really important to the thriving of our society and specifically to the thriving of our democracy. Community has been in decline over the last 75 years. I'm not alone in feeling that. And most importantly, the task at hand, if we want to solve so many public problems in America, is turning this around and figuring out how can we rejuvenate community life in America.
Right. No, absolutely. It's such a key thing. And if we didn't know prior to the pandemic, we experienced what it was like to not have community in a major way during that time. So was there something in that class that it was difficult to bring to the people through a documentary? Because I imagine there's only so much you can do with film, although you did a lot. What was it like in there, and what was something that was kind of difficult to transmit that maybe you'd like to share?
Yeah, we used to say there were so many Sudoku puzzles about this film. One is we wanted to wrap our arms around the story of this very abstract concept of community in this very broad and deep nation of America. And so we wanted it to be a movie that everyone could see themselves in. So we wanted groups and examples and concepts from all around the country, all demographic groups, all, racial and economic and religious and history. We wanted to talk about health. We wanted to talk about economics. We wanted to talk about democracy. We wanted to talk about unions and congregations and Rotary clubs and informal gatherings like picnics. And we had to figure out a way to fit that all into one 90-minute film that kept your attention. People have said, why did you only spend a minute on this club? Or why didn't you mention libraries? Or why didn't you mention this factor of why community declined? And, we always respond, every single 90-second moment in our film could be its own documentary because it's such a rich topic of community in America. We have a maybe 45-second part of the film where we talk about street design and street design's effects on community. There are whole organizations about street design. There is a whole 90-minute documentary you could make just on street design. Yeah. So that was one big challenge. The other big challenge that my sister brought to this especially is she was from the documentary side of this. I had come from the civics side. She had come to the documentary side. I still liked documentaries and she still liked civics, but that was kind of where our professions were. And she always said, a idea is not a story. She used to tell me that as we were making the film, just because community in America is a good idea and Robert Putnam has a lot of interesting things to say, that doesn't make it a story. You have to find a story by having characters and plot and drama and tension. We had to go find that. And one of the benefits we had is Robert Putnam's a very good character. American civic history itself is a very good character. And we discovered that me reflecting on my time in the past in Putnam's class and learning about this while reflecting on our time now in America also could be a character. And then Bob's search for the answers to his findings is itself a plot. So we could have had the movie just start with, okay, Bob found out community is very important and community is in decline. But instead, we said, okay, well, Bob went searching for this thing and happened upon this thing and then discovered this, but then he thought this, and then he went searching for that and then discovered that, and then you have a plot.
Right.
And the plot ends, without spoiling too much, the plot ends with Bob hands it off to the viewer, and then the plot becomes, what are you going to do as the viewer to rejuvenate community in America? And so that was another big aspect of the film, is we wanted the film to end in the second person. Begin and end in the second person, because my opening line of narration in the film is, this is a film about why you should join a club and why the fate of America depends on it. It's you, the viewer, and you listening right now. I also think you should join a club.
Okay, well, on that note of joining a club, let's say, everybody's joined something, right? At some point in your life, if you're an adult, more than likely you've joined something.
But I will say this. Yeah. You may have joined something at some point in your life, but 43% of Americans belong to no clubs or organizations.
Right.
And another 25% belong to only one. 75 years ago, it would have been very normal for you to belong to 4 or 5 organizations. A union, a party, a neighborhood association, a congregation, a hobby group, one of the animal clubs like the Elks or the Moose or the Lions.
Right.
Now, 43% of Americans belong to Zip. We have to change that.
No, absolutely. I love it. It's fantastic. Good deal. So for the people who are not currently in a group or organization, 57% of people who are just out of pocket, what advice do you have for them to start? Because it's just kind of like, all right, now, okay, you want me to join something. What do I join? Do I join a gang? Do I join? Like, what am I?
Don't join one of those.
Okay, got it.
And in fact, gangs and mafias thrive in places where there aren't enough things to join. And so actually joining pro-social groups is one of the ways to fight antisocial groups.
Nice.
So, my advice would be, the question we've been telling people, my sister and I have been telling people along this journey, is we've been saying, ask yourself the question, what are you doing alone that you could be doing together? We say in the film, it's not about eating your broccoli. It's about doing what you love together.
Yep.
So if you are raising a kid alone, or just in you and your partner just raising a kid, go join a parents group. If you are running alone, there are running groups. If you're playing alone, there are playing groups. If you're fighting city hall alone because you're mad about something in your city, there are advocacy groups. If you're trying to better your neighborhood alone, there are neighborhood groups. There's even a group in San Francisco we heard about that's called Sunday TV, where they just, you're watching TV alone. You can watch TV together. So there are so many clubs out there. And you just got to try them out. You know, you're not going to like every restaurant, but it's good we have restaurants and you're eventually going to find one you like. Yeah. And you have to give it a shot. You know exactly what's going to happen tonight if you stay home. The way that your life has adventure is if you go out and see what happens. The reason I'm so confident in this is because as we've gone on this tour, we're about to hit 500 community screenings of this film. And if you want to host a community screening, you can go to joinordiefilm.com and click host a screening. We have people that just write to us and they say, I joined a club because of this. And none of them say, I joined a club and I regret it. Right. They always say, I joined a club and it changed my life. That doesn't mean there aren't bad clubs out there. That doesn't mean people haven't had bad experiences with clubs. That doesn't mean there are poorly designed meetings and poorly designed clubs. But the vast majority of people who put themselves out there to join a club and even to start a club find the median experiences, it's a total adventure that transformed my life and led me to join other clubs and meet other people and have all these other things happen in my life.
No, that's fantastic. All right. Let me do something with that. That's a whole PSA. All right. You need to understand what you do alone is something that you could gather and have some time with some people who have the interests that you enjoy, and you could screen this movie in your city and maybe just start a group and then maybe start two, and that's how you coming through with my dude Pete. All right.
One of the wonderful things we found out in the tour is there is a huge history of choruses. There were town choirs, town choruses. It used to be a huge part of civic life. There were choirs inside of other clubs that we found out about. There would be a union that had a choir, or a party had a choir, you know, and it would be a huge part of civic life. And actually, in Putnam's Italy study, the thing that eventually turned him on to looking into civic culture was choral society. So I thought you'd especially appreciate that as a singer.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and I've actually looked for choirs to join. Maybe I need to return that stone because that is super interesting. I'm going to look more into that. Okay. You mentioned earlier, you had parts where we're like, this whole thing could be an entire documentary. Did you have any parts where you're like, oh, I really like this part? That's my first part of the question. And then my second part of the question is, were there moments where it was one of your darlings and you had to cut it and you were like, oh, geez, why? Why do I have to cut this? But you did.
Yeah, you know, I was really into the parts about Putnam doing the investigation in Italy and how he did it, because it was such an epic political science study. And as I run into political scientists around the country with this film, the way that they remember Putnam was not just in his findings, but that his original book, Making Democracy Work, was an incredible model of political science experimentation, because he needed to figure out these huge questions, which are like, how can you decide whether one regional government is more thriving than another regional government? And so you can poll people, you can survey people. But what he did even is he literally tested the efficiency of governments by sending letters to the government and seeing how quick they responded to it.
Oh, yeah.
Or that were things that they promised to respond to. You know, so there's amazing things there of collecting all of his data. And so it was really cool following him as he did this 20-year study in Italy to discover that community was the most important thing for democracy. In terms of what we cut, you know, there was a really fun story that is very cinematic that we had to cut because it didn't just fit with the flow of the plot. But Putnam was once invited to meet in a tent in Libya with Muammar Gaddafi, the Libyan dictator of sorts.
Right.
And there's this epic story. You know, he said it publicly before. I'm not breaking any news here, but Putnam had written a book about democracy. Gaddafi had written a book about how government works, and Gaddafi fancied himself like, I'm a great political scientist, and Putnam's a great political scientist, and we need to have a grand meeting to talk about our books. And Putnam is driven in like an SUV through the Libyan desert to meet in this tent with Gaddafi. And we might have to do that as an extra video one day. We interviewed him about it, and we tried to fit it into the plot, but it didn't really come together.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, you have to put that out at some point. Like, that's fantastic. So speaking of famous figures and the people that you had in the documentary, I really appreciated familiar faces and also unfamiliar faces that I didn't know they existed. And I was like, oh, wow, like what they're saying is so helpful and just spot on. What is something that y'all learned from one of those individuals? And you can shout them out if you like, but like with that brain trust of people, I was just like, ooh, I feel like there's a lot of stuff that maybe didn't make the cut.
Yeah, we have dozens of hours of footage of interviews that didn't make the cut. This is one of the tragedies of documentaries is, you interview someone for an hour and a half, you end up using 4 minutes of their interview. Right. We had so many wonderful people. We had people that knew Bob on his journey. We had Dave Campbell, who did research with Bob. We had Hillary Clinton, who was one of the first politicians affected by Bob's Bowling Alone work. It impacted her work. But then we had all the other people that think about social capital in their work. One very close to my heart is Jane McAlevey, the late labor organizer, who talks about the importance of mobilizing versus organizing. Here's a very important concept for your listeners. Jane McAlevey likes popularizing the idea of mobilizing is when you take a group of people and you activate them one time in an ad hoc action, like get all these people to write a letter to Congress or get all these people to show up at a march one day or a protest. That is one level of advocacy and community organizing. The next level is organizing, not just mobilizing, where you actually bring those people together. You develop solidarity between them. You develop trust between them. You let them be their own leaders, co-creating and deciding what they want their next action to be. And that's going to get you 10 times, 100 times more of an impact than mobilizing. So she had all these little gems. Hari Hahn, who's the great Johns Hopkins political scientist and in many ways a successor of the next generation to the tradition Putnam is working in, also talks about many of these ideas and also talks about how organizations are places where you develop civic skills. Organizations and clubs are the gym where you build up your civic muscles, how to host a meeting, how to navigate difference, how to make things happen in the world, how to plan and execute on things. This is also such an important topic because when people say right now, I don't even know where to begin, it's because they haven't been to the civic gym. The civic gym is a club.
Right. 100%. 100%. Yeah, it was crazy seeing that part of the documentary. This isn't a huge spoiler, but it's like the numbers are all going down, but then you go was it 1950 or 1960, and then the numbers were all going up as far as joining and membership and whatnot. I'm a massive fan of the progressive movement. I feel like from your writings, I've seen the same thing, some similar ideas. And they really made a huge difference. Speaking of being in the gym and organizing and also fighting against societal problems and policy and whatnot and creating better policy. It's an inspiring time. Do you feel like we're just very complacent as a society? We just have too much bread and circus of, distractions and just feeling comfortable. Like, where are we as a society that we can kind of revive that spirit, so to speak?
Yeah, the way that my sister and I see this is we like using the ecosystem metaphor, the ecological metaphor, which is that take a rainforest. And let's say a rainforest has ecosystem collapse where it kind of dies out and becomes a desert or a barren wasteland. The way that it dies out is because of a mix of a bunch of different things. Maybe climate change led to soil being different, and then the soil eroded in a different way, and a river moved because of that soil erosion, and then a certain bug was no longer able to survive, and then a bird was no longer able to survive, and the bird, by nesting in the tree, helped the tree achieve certain things, and then slowly the birds die, and the bugs die, and the soil dies out, and then the trees die out, and you have a desert instead of a rainforest. That is how civics works too. You have a very thriving civic time at mid-20th century, and then maybe television comes in in and distracts people. Maybe the baby boom leads to intergenerational misunderstanding, so no one's passing on civic traditions from generation to generation. Maybe other factors like suburban sprawl and others are all contributing to these different things, and then one civic group dies out and another civic group dies out and a newspaper dies out and civic meeting places die out and a culture of meeting up and being in solidarity dies out, and then there's less of a voting block for the type of policies that support a civic society, and then eventually you're in a civic desert, which is where we are today. That's the sad story. The happy story at the end is if you keep the ecological ecosystem metaphor, the way you do reforestation is also ecologically. You create one thing and then create another thing and then create another thing to support them, and then you start building a virtuous cycle. You create one club, then you create another club, then you create a local newspaper to celebrate all the clubs, and then you create a city events board to make sure everyone knows the events that are happening, and then you want to celebrate the civic culture that's growing, so you have a new parade or annual holiday in your city. And then maybe there's a club of clubs that is helping people launch clubs like Join Philly in Philadelphia or Build IRL in San Francisco or the recently launched Join ATL in Atlanta. And then maybe slowly over time you have more people that have been through this civic gym of being in clubs that they know they develop civic capacities and civic cultures where it becomes easier for them to form new things and organize people for other things. And then you build constituencies for policies of the government that also support this work. And then over time, you have a virtuous cycle. And out of that, you can reforest. And so what we need to do is we just need to get started planting those seeds. There's a wonderful poem by the great civic theorist Wendell Berry, who's a farmer philosopher out of Kentucky, where he says, in the dark of the moon, in flying snow, in the dead of winter, war spreading, families dying, the world in danger, I walk the rocky hillside sowing clover. I walk the rocky hillside sowing clover. What we need is people to sow clover. You need to plant that first seed, and that's why we made it super simple in this film. Join a club.
Yeah.
But then after that, create a club for people to join.
Mm-hmm.
Think about supporting the civic development of your town by creating more neighborhood organizations, creating a civic events board, doing a civic census of all the clubs and meeting spaces in town, creating a civic directory of all the clubs in town, eventually creating a civic development office in your town, just like how we have an economic development office.
Yeah.
Because we are civically underdeveloped as a country compared to Northern Italy or Quebec or Korea or many other places, Mexico City, many other places. And we're facing the consequences of our civic underdevelopment. So we're not going to solve any of these problems until we civically develop more.
No, 100% agree. And by the way, have you given a TED Talk? Because that's a TED Talk right there.
Yeah, well, there's so many. It's not me. I appreciate you saying that, but it is the topic itself, which is, it is such a rich topic for our time. It applies to every sector. If you care about health, civic participation is correlated with health and public health, individual health and public health. Your chances of dying in the next year are cut in half by joining one group. COVID spread less in cities that had more social capital. If you care about growth, civics leads to growth. If you care about economic equality, civics leads to more economic equality. If you care about education, schools do better when they're surrounded by a community. All of this, if you care about people not having road rage or flicking people off or getting in fights, that's all correlated with how many civic groups are in your town. All of this stuff, let alone a healthy democracy. This really matters.
No, absolutely, 100%. All right, let me do a little something with that real quick. Come through and I witness. I'm talking about civic duties that I got, and I got to join a group. I got to come through because I got to add to the ecosystem, and that's what I'm saying. That is my mission. I got to plant a bunch of clover up on the rocks, and that's what I do. I do it nonstop. I got to understand that we just join together, and then we won't flick each other off, and that's what I do. I got to come straight through and not have roid rage. I got to come through, and I got to understand that the stage is a place where I come and show my face. I got to be the leader, and then a repeater, maybe make clubs of clubs, and that's what I do. Spread the love, spit off the top, and that's how I go. Civics right there. Up in the flow. All right.
Whoa. Are those straight off the dome?
Yeah. I'm just working with what you gave me and stuff I've read, I guess in life. But
wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Amazing.
No, thank you, man. Thank you. Appreciate it. So start by joining a club. eventually start a club, start a group. As you were making your documentary, I bet you, whether it was from the Oddfellows or, oh, can I share a fun story that, yeah.
Please do. It's your podcast. Let's do it.
Zara in Atlanta, she lives in my neighborhood. The footage that you had of the bike group, my neighborhood, not far from me.
Atlanta.
Yeah.
Atlanta has such a great civic history. I found this old book about a group in Atlanta where a group of people got together and they went door to door. This was like at the turn of the last century. Mm-hmm. A group of women got together and they went door to door, canvassing the neighborhood, asking them not to vote for a candidate, not to buy Girl Scout cookies, not to raise money for something. They went door to door asking people, what is a public problem in our neighborhood that you want solved? And then they gathered all that information. And out of that, they formed different activities of betterment in the neighborhood to solve the problem that they canvassed for. And in the process of doing the canvassing, they networked people together and organized more people for their group while surfacing all these issues. It was so amazing, all out of Atlanta's civic history. And we all know the incredible civil rights legacy of Atlanta, 100%. Too. It's an amazing city for civics.
No, it's amazing. Yeah, no, I didn't know about that. And I'm gonna have to look more into that because that's really cool. So as you interacted with these different groups, what is something cool that you learned from one of these groups that they do where you were just like, ooh, I'm going to steal that. I'm going to use that. That's really good. Because I imagine that a lot of them had some pretty different ways of doing things that maybe you were just like, oh, that's good.
You know, there's so many amazing things we learned, specifically groups in the film. I loved that the bowling league in Portland, Maine, they have one league a year where you go with people that you chose to be in a team with. And then they have one league a year where you're randomly assigned to a team. I thought that was really interesting. So part of the league is like you and your close friends can be in the league together and play these other people. But then part of the league is you got to meet strangers and get connected with people. That was really cool. Mm-hmm. I loved that Zara in Red Bike and Green in Atlanta mixed biking with community art, you know, or supporting local businesses. You know, they would bike, but then they'd bike to specific places. Mm-hmm. I love that the group Cielo in LA mixed fun things like having a dance and hip hop night with serious things like having a vaccination clinic. Oh, yeah. You know, the best clubs don't laser focus on one thing. They let themselves naturally and organically spread to more and more things. So they take up a bigger part of people's lives and solve more problems in people's lives, fulfill more needs, and therefore they become substantial enough that they survive.
No, that's fantastic. Oh my gosh. All that is worth stealing. And yeah, there's a very strong bike culture in Atlanta where they hang out, they eat, they drink, they do this thing. I've joined them sometimes and it's a good time. That's awesome. You had mentioned something about street design earlier, and I was like, I'm putting a pin in that because we're coming back to that. I live in Atlanta now. I lived in LA for a time as well. When I lived in LA, I did not have my own parking spot. I think you know where this is going. So I had to find street parking every time I parked. And sometimes I wouldn't leave my apartment because I was like, if I leave my apartment, it takes me 15 minutes to find parking, and therefore I'm not going to leave. And so sometimes I would just stay home, and it was kind of, looking back on it, I was like, I probably shouldn't have lived there. Same thing with Atlanta, like the traffic and also the lack of parking all over the place gets people to, you know, it's enough friction to stop people from going out sometimes. So in regards to people who are renters, people who, you know, don't have a family, maybe they're single or at least not married, what advice do you have on where they should live and things that you've seen that are conducive to getting people out and joining? I know that we need to suck it up, Buttercup, and get out there and deal with the traffic and deal with the parking and whatnot. But
yeah, like how to design a city to be more conducive to joining culture.
Yeah, or even like where should people live? And
yeah, not to fight the premise. I don't want to fight it too hard, and I'm happy to directly answer the question. But I will say one of the messages of our film is that we are here to co-create the world with each other. Mm-hmm. And so this is about people who have come together to make the places that they are better. And part of the problem may be that we have too much of a consumer mindset when we're thinking about where to live. Because the places that have figured out how to have a good civic culture get flooded with people, and then the cost of living goes up, and then the thing that made it have the original civic culture eventually dies out. What we need is we actually need to open up more places to be strong, thriving civic cultures. If you think your town is a civic wasteland, you are not alone in feeling that. There's someone else who might be in your town who feels that. And as soon as you get 3 people there, you have a conspiracy that's ready to go and start civically rejuvenating your town. I ran into someone who all the young people were leaving their town in Wisconsin. And when they asked all the young people why they were leaving, all the young people said, well, there's nothing to do in this town. And what they started is they got a bunch of people who decided to stay, and they got them to start a club called There's Nothing to Do in Our Town. Right. And what the club does is it informs people of what to do in town. Yeah. They went to clay cafes and bars and different venues and different clubs, and they surfaced them in a civic directory and events board where they showed that there were all these things to do. And they found out there was a lot more to do, but there still wasn't enough. So they also surfaced a group to think up new things to do. And they printed up t-shirts saying there's nothing to do in our town. And they became their own civic development league. That's what we need people to do in every town. And so what we need is we need clubs. We need events. We need meeting spaces. We need meeting spaces in public, like people first places, like plazas and sidewalks and parks. The great book by Eric Kleinenberg is called Social Infrastructure. It's about palaces of the people. It's the story of social infrastructure, libraries, parks, the places you meet. And then we need the civic infrastructure of that civic life. So we need community events boards. I'm just going to keep harping on this. We need to do civic censuses where we list all the meeting spaces and list all the clubs. We need civic development offices and groups that are coming together and thinking about what is the next thing our town needs. We need to surface the civic history of a town where you can see, oh my gosh, we used to have an Oddfellows Lodge that threw this incredible annual event. Why did the event die out? Let's bring it back. And then you need, things like local newspapers that not only inform you about the town, but this is the most important thing about a local newspaper. You think the most important thing for civics about a local newspaper is that it tells you that there are events happening or clubs happening. That is very important. But that's the second most important thing about a local newspaper. The most important thing about a local newspaper is a local newspaper tells you that what you're doing in your town is important. It matters. If you throw an incredible annual initiative, or you change some law, or you clean up the park, a local newspaper covers it. And in covering it, it says what you did mattered. And so when the local newspaper dies out, and the keeping track of the civic history dies out, and the people showing up to things dies out, you start not wanting to clean up the park anymore because who cares?
Right.
We need to build up that sense of ourselves. It's civic self-respect. And it has to start somewhere. But once it starts, it has its own momentum.
Oh my gosh, that's fantastic. All right. Well, you know what? I feel like you're just talking to me right now, which you are. But I'm just like, I need to start something. That's awesome. Do you mind me asking what you're involved in as far as things that maybe you're involved in and also you recommend that maybe people can join?
I am part of one of the great classic American clubs, which is a book club that I love. I just moved to a new town. When I was at my old town, I was part of a group that was like a civic betterment group called Shout Out to Falls Church Forward in Falls Church, Virginia, that worked on many of these things and, was involved in housing advocacy in my old town. And I just moved to this new place. My book club's still going, but I hope I can join. I'm really excited to join my local neighborhood association. I've already been to one of their events. If your neighborhood does not have a neighborhood association, this is not a HOA. It's not just a punitive neighborhood association telling you to, paint your shutters. Sure. We need positive civic neighborhood associations that create a sense of the public, of the common, of the communal in your neighborhood where you can get together with your neighbors and ask questions like, what do we want to co-create next? What public problems do we identify and can we solve with our neighbors? Sure. So I'd recommend that. And I just recommend everyone ask that question. What are you doing alone that you could be doing together? Because so many people tell us, I don't have time to do community. But the people at the peak of community life in America 75 years ago, at the late 1800s, when we had another peak, they had even less time than us. And they did it because they asked that question, what are we doing alone that we could be doing together? It's stuff we're already doing, but we might be able to make time by doing it together with other people.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's a good thought, and I appreciate you circling back to that. All right, so before we go, I do want to talk about a couple things. Your sister's work, like besides the documentary, is there anything else that she's created that people can check out?
Yeah, check out. My sister's a tremendous video journalist. It's Rebecca Davis Video, if you Google it. She was on the second season of Explained on Netflix, the Vox Explainer show. She has 10 years of incredible short video journalism out of New York with her time at the New York Daily News and at NBC News. So definitely check out her work. And she's part of so many civic clubs, including the Emergency Worker Organizing Committee, which helps people found worker advocacy organizations and unions in places all across the country, and with her own community calendar in her neighborhood. So she's really practicing what the film is preaching.
Wow, that's amazing. Very cool. And then also like to talk about your other books, Democracy Policy Network, whatever else, and anything else that you just kind of want to plug right now.
Yeah, I have a book that is in many ways a spiritual prequel to Join or Die of sorts called Dedicated: The Case for Commitment in an Age of Infinite Browsing. It's all about the idea of taking a leap and dedicating yourself to something larger than yourself, a place, a community, an institution, a cause, a craft, a person. And the reason I wrote it was for civic reasons, which is that often the number one reason that people aren't participating in the civic rejuvenation that we need is because they're stuck infinitely browsing and not diving in and doing the type of long haul work, day in, day out, year in, year out work of which things actually happen. One of the themes of this book, Dedicated, is that so many people imagine that civic bravery is about one big brave moment. It's about standing up at the right moment. You know, it's about giving the epic speech at the right time. It's about charging up the hill for the battle. But most grand civic victories in our nation's history are not from one big brave moment. They're not from someone reacting perfectly at the right time. They're from people's 5, 10, 15, 20, 30, and in the case of great epic movements like the abolition movement, for example, 35-year slow, day in, day out, year in, year out, long haul efforts. And so it's a celebration of that and an encouragement of us to partake in our own long haul efforts.
One of the things that Bob Putnam said in the movie was TV is the enemy for civic engagement. So do you want to say something about that, or also talk about infinite scrolling?
You know, I love TV as much as the next guy. I'm wearing a Late Show with David Letterman shirt right now because I love it. But here's the thing we have to grapple with. Americans, on average, watch 4 to 5 hours of TV a day. That is not just on your phone. That is in addition to your phone, which is 4 to 5 hours a day. 4 to 5 hours a day is about 14 years of your life.
Oh, my Lord.
Think of if 14 years, let's save 2 of those years for watching TV because Real Housewives of Salt Lake City is so good. You need to have some time to watch TV.
100%.
In my case, I love Survivor.
Yeah.
I'm not giving up Jeff Probst.
Okay.
But can we give 10 of those 14 years back to our public life? Mm-hmm. Because more of that time is going to be taken away if we don't tend to public life. Here's the thing. This is not eat your vegetables to be a good person. This is the reality. Everything in this country will get worse if we do not invest in public life.
Right.
If we do not participate in our common society together. It will get worse. We will look back on 2025 and say it was one of the best years in public life in America if we don't change this. No one is coming to save us. The only people that can save us here are us deciding to co-create our shared world and have a civic rejuvenation. So we need to get out there. It starts with joining a club. It starts with rediscovering our sense of our own power. It starts with rediscovering a public with each other by meeting together and encountering each other, listening to each other, and figuring out what we care about together and what we're going to do about it together, and then doing it. We got to get out there and do it.
That is the mic drop way to end this, because that is the call to action. Yeah. That would be terrible if we said 2025 was the best year of public.
That is where we are headed. That is seriously where we are headed if people don't join up with things.
Okay.
The world is not self-fixing.
No.
This is what we're trained. We're trained by consumer bureaucratic society to say someone else is going to fix that for me, and then I'll have my choice of what I want to do. Or I will not be the one that will be met with the meat grinder that's coming. That is not going to happen. It's not how it's going to happen. The only way that things get better is when people decide to make them better. That is how we got anything that's good today.
Right.
Look back on the history of everything that's good today. Let me give you an example before we leave.
Sure.
In America, this is something we have over our European friends. In America, bathrooms are free.
Okay.
In most restaurants and public spaces. In Europe, you have to pay a coin to use a bathroom.
Wow.
It was not always the case that bathrooms were free. A group of teenagers, led by a boy named Ira Gassel, created a club to advocate for free bathrooms across the country in the 70s. And because of their advocacy, we have free bathrooms all across the country. That is the case with everything that is good in this country today.
In the 1970s?
Yes.
What?
They had a newsletter called the Free Toilet Paper. They wrote letters to the editor. They wrote to governors and mayors. It was a bunch of teens that decided to do that.
Oh my gosh. If he's still alive, I'm going to find him and see if I can interview him, because that's great. That's awesome. Okay, I know we're up on time. Real quick, besides watching and sharing it online, right? So watch the documentary, absolutely watch it on Netflix. Share it on whatever, Facebook, Instagram, Facebook stories, whatever it is. How else can people support your documentary? You said hosting a screening?
Okay, I'm going to be a bad Netflix licensor, which is our film is on Netflix. We'd love you to watch the film, but I will be a rare case of saying our hope is that you don't just watch it alone on Netflix. Our hope is that you watch it together and use it as a tool to build community in your own neck of the woods. So we have maintained our community rights to this film of people who want to throw a genuine community event around the film. We're about to hit 500 of those community screenings. So if you go to joinorddiefilm.com, click host a screening and write to us, we can get you set up with a community screening of the film. We have a whole process where you can meet with us and talk about what you're looking for your screening. You could pair it with a joining fair. You could pair it with a civic history showcase. You could pair it with a discussion or a Q&A with us, or a Q&A with local civic leaders in your town. Use it as a tool to do your own civic rejuvenation in your town, like so many others have too. So I hope you could do that. And I hope you could check out some of the clubs that have been started out of Join or Die, inspired by Join or Die, like Join Philly, like the Tiny Club app out of Vermont, which is trying to create an app that helps you form in real life clubs, and so many others. We're hoping to just play our part in sparking this much necessary civic rejuvenation.
Well, that's fantastic. You heard it, people. You got to host a screening. I'm going to host a screening. That's what I'm doing. All right. I'm committed to that. That's fantastic. All right, Pete. How can people connect with you online?
I'm at petedavis.org and at Pete D. Davis on most of the social media websites.
Okay, fantastic. And I'll tag your sister's information in the show notes, and then we'll get it all out. Well, Pete, thanks so much for the conversation. I got so much out of this, and now I'm doing a ton of digging of my own of all the things that you talked about.
Wonderful. Are we going to get another song out of this last segment?
Oh, sure, man. Sure. Yeah, why not? Here we go. Okay. Yo, come through when I'm streaming. I'm talking about hosting a screening. I'm talking about a whole bunch of things that you could bring a whole bunch of your friends together and you could grab some popcorn and just have a movie night. I'm cruising like my people in the city need to freaking meet up, and then we could talk about things that we're engaged in. I'm talking about civic engagement. I'm talking about things that we just take into the freaking streets when we get inspired, and that's what I'm saying. You got that fire up in your chest, and you just got to bless all the people now with the freaking movie, and that's what I'm saying. Just truly coming off the top and talking about things that we got to bring, like rejuvenation. That's what I'm saying. It's a new creation, spit off the top, and that's how I go. Pete Davis, me, done with the flow. All right, there it is.
What a notepad, Don. I have to say, this is the most unique interview we've had on the film, so I love it.
I'm glad you enjoyed it, my man. Well, thank you so much for joining me. Everybody out there, watch Join or Die, and yeah, just keep doing the important work you're doing, Pete.
Thank you.
Indeed.
Keep up the good fight.
You too. All right, so that's the episode. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you apply all of these important learnings to your own life. If you're new here, don't forget to hit the follow button so you don't miss future episodes. And if you enjoyed this episode, my only request from you is for you to send this episode to a friend that you think will benefit from it, or to share it to your stories wherever you hang out online. Shout out to my dude Siraj Rhett, who made the instrumental for this podcast, and shout out to Ted Craig, who edited this episode. And again, shout out to Pete and Rebecca Davis for the amazing work that they're doing in the world. Make sure you check out their documentary, Join or Die, and also check out their links, which are in the show notes. All right, so that's all I got for now. This is Your One Life. I'm Kim Young Kim. I hope you have a great day and a great week. And until next time, peace!